Any department, you know what you expect from the annual report. But with Parliament, there's no format. As there were many secretaries came and go in Parliament, you will find also that the annual reports also, they are different. There is no standard format. When there is no standard format, it compromises accountability, because the person who's supposed to come and account to the committee will choose what to account about in the committee. But when there's a standard format, the standard format will tell what should be presented to the committee. So reports will have a structure, but now they are choosing what to account to the committee. Then we have been proposing that since 2014, that there is this weakness in the reporting of Parliament. But till today, that recommendation has not been considered. The committee has been proposing, recommending that there should be an improvement in terms of reporting format of Parliament. That's the key issue, because it affects the performance of the committee also. You will find that the committee sometimes, somewhere, somehow, it relies only on the provision of information from the management of Parliament. It doesn't have a standard where it says, oh, we expect this from the report, the annual report of Parliament, or from the quarterly report of Parliament, mainly the annual report. It changes all the time. So we present it today to the committee so that the committee can look at this, because it affects the accountability and oversight also. It renders the committee weak when it comes to that, because it won't get sufficient information to hold Parliament accountable. So the mandate of the committee, specifically it says the committee is overseeing the financial management of Parliament. But when you look at the POA, it's broad. It's not only finances, it also touches on policies and all that. But with this committee, it looks narrow. But I don't think that to resolve that problem, you need to amend the Act. But you need to develop regulations that will assist and help the committee also to look at the policies. Because budget is not only figures. Budget is informed by policies. If this committee cannot look at the policies of Parliament, which means we will be not be doing its work, it will only just checking how much Parliament has spent and how much it has overspent, that's all. But the budget itself, it's informed by policies of Parliament. So I think then we come to the time where I've already said now that everything that this committee is provided to do by the Act is legislated. You will find that during around September, October, the committee has to deal with the annual report of Parliament. Around November is the budget and the strat plan. And then it has to present it in the House, the report in the House based on an annual report of Parliament and the strat plan. But I don't know whether is the requirement of the rules when the co-chairs present the report, each co-chair present the report separately in the House. For example, the co-chair of the NCOP will go and present the same report of the committee in the NCOP, and the co-chair of the NA will go and present the same report in the NA House. So I don't know whether is it informed by the rules or not. You see, there are many things that are not clear when it comes to that. But that has been a standard practice that the co-chair present the report of the committee in the Parliament. But the same report is not that is the different report. Both houses, they have to adopt the same report. So I don't know, I'm not following the slides. If members, they would have questions, then I will stop there, then I'll be able to respond to the questions also. Yes.
Are you done with the presentation?
I'm done now,
No.
Chair.
Okay. Members, I thought Is there any other presentation that you need
Yes,
to
there's-
take? Yeah.
Elelana
Let's allow the presentations so that when we engage in all the presentations.
What is going on there? What's going on there? Good evening, coaches, once again, honorable members, colleagues. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think that Chair had indicated earlier on that this is a workshop. It's an induction just to assist members to get into grips with the work and the function of the committee as an uncharted water. So that as members continue to do their work, they gradually begin to understand what this animal is all about. And it is really going to be a conversation between ourselves and honorable members and members amongst themselves as well. It's not a formal session that we need to be, you know. Yeah, it's a conversation. Chair, co-chairs, my colleague has spoken about the mandate of the committee. He has compared and contrasted the committee with the former structure that existed.
We are a bit lost. We don't know which package it is. The last one.
The last one.
Oh, thank you, Chair.
We are on the legacy report presentation, Honorable Sowisa.
I think it's written, and
You found it? Okay. Thank you, Chair. So, Chair, my presentation is going to deal with the purpose of the presentation, which is the legacy report, the issues that were dealt with by this committee in the 6th Parliament, and also issues that were not concluded at that time, which are then recommended to be dealt with by this committee in the 7th Parliament. Chair, I've got the purpose, introduction, focus areas for the 6th Parliament, as well as the recommendations for the 7th Parliament. It's a straightforward presentation with no graphs and figures and statistics, just a history and a way forward. Yeah, the purpose is really to bring to the attention of this committee all matters that emanate from the previous committee so that they can be pursued. I'm not going to deal with this slide because my colleague has already dealt with the mandate and the function of the committee, just to save time. And I think the issue of the mandate, Chair, is an important one that I think members need to really familiarize themselves with, because it's what is going to guide your work from now henceforward. That is one. Two, it's also what is going to guide your engagement as you develop what we call committee strategic planning documents. It's what is going to guide your program. It's also what is going to ultimately guide your legacy report for the 8th Parliament, and what we have achieved and what we have not achieved. And you would see there are some matters that were resolved from the 5th Parliament when this committee started, but there were also some matters that have been carried forward from the 6th Parliament to the 7th Parliament, which are going to be reflected in the presentation. So I think the issue of the mandate, chair, and function of the committee is an important one, because it's a tricky situation when members are still energetic beginning of the term. They've got appetite, a lot of appetite to look at everything and anything. But when there is a legislation that prescribes the mandate, it helps to guide that particular energy, that we tailor it into the right direction. Chair, as I said, the 6th Parliament was informed by the 50 issues that were emanating from the 5th Parliament, which included the in-year monitoring, which was to scrutinize the quarterly reports of Parliament, and also mid-year reports, as well as annual report, as my colleague was talking about. That is your oversight function. Your in-year monitoring is when the Parliament officials come before you to present what they are going to do in the first quarter, in the second quarter, in the third quarter, in the fourth quarter, and in the annual report. So it's important to have those quarterly meetings to assess the performance of the institution, to ensure that the targets that they said they're going to achieve on the first quarter are being presented as such. And if they are not achieved, that's where the committee will have to engage with the members of the executive to say, but what are the reasons that led to this particular target not being achieved in Program 1, in Program 2, and in Program 3? And therefore, it's not only the reason that they need to present, but the remedial actions also to intervene in those particular challenges, to say, how are they going to respond to ensure that those targets are met? So that's your function of the in-year monitoring that is part of your mandate as this committee. And Chair, in the 6th Parliament, there was a recommendation that came from the 5th Parliament which said there was a need to, I'm not sure, actually, the IT gurus are not around, and the presentation seems not to be reflecting, I'm sorry, Chair, coaches, seems, no, I can see the document here, but it's not reflected on the projector.
Chairperson, we are having hard copies. You can continue, and then this one will join it later, please.
It's not reflecting. It's reflecting on that one. Thank you, Chairperson. Thanks. I apologize, honourable members. Chair, the committee in the 6th Parliament started also looking at the performance report of the Parliamentary Budget Office, which is an office that is established by Money Bills Act, Section 15 of the Act, which supports with an intention to support both the Finance and Appropriations Committees on budget issues. So that entity reports to Parliament, and the committee's scope was also extended to say, let's look at that particular report, the performance report. So the main issues that were looked at in the 6th Parliament were as follows. The committee was ensuring that the filling of strategic positions to ensure that leadership stability within the administration was prioritized. Chair, we are aware of the ongoing budget cuts nationwide across government. So Parliament is also not immune from that particular exercise, where the reprioritization process affects all the programs and deliverables of both government, legislative sector, and so forth. And therefore, the filling of not all vacancies, because we might have had 400 vacancies, but because of the budget cuts, you were forced to then look at the most critical positions that are going to allow the institution to function optimally. And Chair, the overseeing of the implementation of the strategic plans, annual performance plans for the 6th Parliament as part of its function, the considering and reporting on Parliament's quarterly mid-year annual performance reports, overseeing the implementation of the Act, and also the development of the rules, which my colleague has spoken about, which up until now the rules have not yet been developed. Ensuring that Parliament was adequately resourced to meet its constitutional obligations and financial liabilities, and most importantly, overseeing the restoration of the buildings which were affected by fire in 2022, Chair. This is an important issue, Chair, that the committee will need to really familiarize itself with and get into grips with, but I'll deal with it as we go with the slides. The next slide, Chair, deals with the recommendations of the now 7th Parliament. What is it that needs to be prioritized, which the honorable members were talking about when I came in here by this committee going forward? One, in the 6th Parliament, this committee did not have an opportunity to develop its own strategic planning. And therefore, this matter should be prioritized by this committee because the strat plan of the committee gives guidance and direction on what are the parameters of this committee, what are the issues that needs to be looked at by this committee for the next 5 years. Of course, it's a document that is reviewed on an annual basis through the APP, but as a living document, it sort of gives guidance. It also informs your program. That's when members of the committee also get an opportunity to develop their own priorities for the 7th Parliament through that document. However, Chair, I must question that the success of that particular process is also dependent on certain key documents that are beyond this committee's control. One, Parliament should adopt its own strategic plan as an institution, because your strategic plan should be guided by what is it Parliament that is going to do, and therefore your oversight should be tailored on that particular area. And secondly, it should be guided by the policy priorities of Parliament, which needs to be adopted and published so that they guide your oversight as a committee for Parliament. What is it that Parliament is going to focus on as priorities? And therefore, this committee then develop its plan that encapsulates those policy priorities. Last but not least, the medium-term strategic framework of government is also an important document, which is now called the medium-term development framework. It's also an important document. Up until those documents are available, then the committee's strategic planning will not be sufficiently developed. With regards to the review of the Act, my colleague has spoken about it earlier on. The committee recommended that at the time when this report was compiled, the regulation to cement the implementation of the Act had not been developed, and therefore there needs to be a follow-up in that regard, so that you are able to deal with some of the gray areas that are in the Act that my colleague was picking up through the rules and regulations. And during the 5th Parliament, there was a concern that the committee was not adequately empowered to consider the administrative affairs of the institution. And in the 6th Parliament, the Speakers Forum also took a resolution that the Act should be reviewed and the regulations can then be developed. So, meaning that you've got to start with the review of the Act, then thereafter you can be able to develop the regulations so that your regulations can take into account the review aspect of the Act as well. Because if you're going to develop the regulations now, while you still have to review the Act, taking into account some of the gaps that my colleague has raised in terms of the policy aspect of oversight and also planning and all of that, that this Act is not speaking about, is silent about, and only speak about the financial management, has to be taken into account when you review that particular Act. And therefore, eventually you've got to develop the rules. But if the rules development process is already underway, there's nothing stopping this committee to look into that as well. But it's an important issue because it also gives certain parameters in terms of how you operate in terms of the legal framework of this committee. And Chair, the committee in the 6th Parliament also recommended that one of the most important aspects of this review is to get Parliament to give you time frames when it comes to this review process. Of course, you can't have a review that is open-ended. There has to be clear time frames so that you can hold the executive accountable. That how far are you with the review of the Act, how far are you with development of regulations and so forth. And I think that's an important one. With regards to the budget allocation of Parliament, Chair, I must say this is a thorny issue This is a hot potato because it talks to the budget reform processes that needs to happen between the legislature as a sector and government, and all the three the three arms of state, how resources are being allocated to one another. In that, we recognize Parliament as a distinct arm of state when it comes to other matters. But when it comes to the budget allocation, we still subject it into the appropriations bill. The appropriations bill, which is a mechanism for Parliament to appropriate monies for departments of government. And Parliament is not a department of government. It's an arm of state, including the provincial legislatures. And therefore, there should be a separate, documented, clear mechanism that allocate resources for Parliament as a custodian of policies and lawmaking. And it's one of the issues, Chair, that you may well, co-chairs, want to package as part of the objectives when you do your study tour at some point, because I think one of the things that this committee has missed is to have a study tour in the beginning of the process, so that it forms part and parcel of formulating a committee that understands how other committees of a similar nature in other countries are operating, and also how they have dealt with some of the issues that keeps popping up in our democracy. Chair, when it comes to the Parliamentary Medical Aid Scheme, Chair, there is an issue also there. This is a medical aid scheme, Chair, that covers former members of Parliament and the former members of provincial legislatures. So the scheme is budgeted for by Parliament. And the Sixth Parliament was concerned about the liability that is posed by this scheme to the fiscus of Parliament. And at the time of compiling this report, Chair, Parliament had a financial position, the net liability of 1.1 billion due to this particular scheme. And at the time when the report was compiled again, it was clear that PAMET, in short, which is the name of the scheme, in short, if you take out that particular liability of PAMET, Parliament would have a healthy financial position with a net of 167 million at the time when the report of the legacy was compiled. And therefore, that is the extent and the dent that the scheme is actually making in the resources of Parliament at the present moment. And of note is that Parliament has included this PAMET matter in its funding and costing model to ensure that this is also reflected in its books. The committee in the Sixth Parliament recommended that the new committee should follow up on this matter, on whether there is progress made by both Parliament and National Treasury to transfer or to investigate the most appropriate funding model or funding vehicle for this particular scheme. And the committee also recommended that the new committee should receive regular progress report on this matter to ensure that this matter is resolved as a matter of agency. This is an important issue also, Chair. Chair, then the restoration of parliamentary infrastructure, which was damaged by fire in 2022, where the new wing and the old assembly was affected, and most of the venues, Chair of Parliament, committee venues, were also affected, with members of Parliament offices were also affected. And that's why, Chair, we've been struggling to get our meetings into a physical space because of the shortage of venues that were affected by that particular incident. Chair, the committee was informed that National Treasury had committed 2 billion to start the project in 2023. And Chair, the DPSA was appointed as an implementing agent. However, the cost of the project in March 2024 had risen to 3 billion rand. But note that the design of the project at that time was only at 40%. So the cost could be more than 3 billion rand, subject to the completion of the design. So you still have the 59% outstanding of the design that still needs to be costed so that you can arrive at the conclusive figure. And therefore, that's why it's important, Chair, for members to actually really pay a particular attention on this particular project. There's a lot of money that is going to go into this project. The deadline for the project, it was envisaged to be November 2025. However, it was shifted for various reasons to 2026. And it was not clear on the report as to what were the reasons that necessitated the actual shift of the deadline, which is an issue also that the committee may want to interrogate with the Executive of Parliament to say what were the reasons of extending the deadline, what are the remedial actions to that effect, what are the interventions, and are we making headways in terms of ensuring that the expenditure in that project is actually in line with the performance targets of the project, the milestones of the project as highlighted in the Gantt chart of the project. It's important to go there and do that kind of an assessment. And Chair, the committee also recommended that the new committee should ensure that administration of Parliament commits to a real-time audit of the project throughout the duration, especially given the magnitude of the amount of budget that will be spent. This will assist to address any unnecessary cost escalations, irregularities, and unjustifiable delays. I think this is an important issue also, Chair, that for you to realize value for money in that project that is going to cost billions of francs, something different has to be done. We've seen a lot of projects in municipalities, in the provincial government, where monies are being spent, but when you really assess the value for money in those projects, you struggle to get value for money, you struggle to get it. So Parliament, as a national key point, is undertaking a project of billions of francs. And therefore, this project should serve as a lesson for other spheres of government, for other state organs, that as Parliament, this is what we did to get it right. So the issue of real-time audit for me is one of those important aspects that will ensure good governance for the project, will ensure transparency for the project, will ensure that any detection of early warning will be done and remedial action will be taken on the spot and address it. So I think it's an important issue. And there was a proposal also, Chair, that when you go for site visit, you should extend your invitation to Public Works to source some specialists from built environment, your engineers and so forth, because myself and my colleague, we are not engineers. We are not proficient in that area. So that at least you can get independent and objective opinions as far as the construction of that project is concerned and be able to conduct effective oversight. I think, Chair, Parliament committee like this one is at liberty to attract all sort of expertise and resources available at its disposal to do its work. So it shouldn't be fixated only to the support staff that is there, but extend, your reach to other stakeholders that can actually bring in value into your work to enhance your oversight, especially in that project. It's very much important. The incident, one important issue also, Chair, that we may need follow-up is that the incident was investigated, but the investigation report or the outcomes report were never shared with the committee, in this Parliament. And therefore, it has to be followed up. What did that report say? What were the issues that were raised by the investigation in that report? So the issue of transparency, again, is at the center. Parliament has got constitutional obligation on these pillars, and it can't preach transparency, public participation to other people, whereas in its own doorstep, those issues are not finding expression. Chair, there is also a project called Organizational Realignment Project, which started, I think, around the fifth Parliament.
Yes.
Yeah, and that project was aimed at enhancing and professionalizing the administration of Parliament and ensure that unnecessary duplication of functions in Parliament, in divisions, in programs of Parliament is done away with, and ensure that MPs, members of Parliament and committees are well supported so that they can do their work. That project has been delayed for quite some time, and the committee remained concerned about the lack of progress in respect of this project. It also recommended that there should be regular quarterly reporting on this so that it can be finalized as urgent as possible. At the time of the adoption of this report, the project was in the process of completing the third phase of the 5 phases that it has. So it will be interesting to know how far the project is when, at the time of adoption, the report was adopted just before the end of the 6th Parliament, and now we've been in the 7th Parliament for a couple of months. So it would be interesting to also track as to how far has the process gone in terms of dealing with the 2 remaining phases of the project. The regular reporting also is recommended, and the committee said more effort needed to be done to fast-track the long overdue completion of the project. Chair, with regards to the public participation, which was also one of the issues that the legacy report raised, this is one of the cornerstones of Parliament functions, and the committee had noted lower than expected, turnout or turnaround in the public participation space, and that was one of their concerns, and rightfully so, because Parliament is the Parliament of the people. And if people can't come here and engage on public participation processes, where else can they do that public participation? And it's one of the key targets of Parliament that there must be public participation when policies are developed, when legislations are being processed. It's a compulsory section in your exam paper, which you cannot do away with. So public participation is one of the key elements of the function of Parliament, and therefore it has to be looked into. Chair, even in your committee, Chair, you will agree with me in finance and in appropriation, we've noted some of these elements that sorry to digress a bit, these elements of the 6th Parliament identified. We've also identified the same thing, that there are challenges because you've got one and the same stakeholders coming to present one and the same thing in the committee, and you don't get to see stakeholders that represent people on the ground. You get stakeholders that have got access to resources, that can fly to Cape Town, that can have virtual meetings, access to virtual meetings. And when you go down there, that's why you'll see there's misalignment in terms of how service delivery is approaching people on the ground vis-a-vis approaching those that are more affluent, because they are in tandem with the processes, they've got access to everything. So I think that biasness, it needs to be addressed in the public participation in general, in all programs, and even in committees. Committees have to look and investigate in ways which they can improve public participation. I remember when I was still in the NA, Honorable Lekanyalo, with the Appropriations Committee, at some point, we took the committee to Khayelitsha. We invited all the townships around Khayelitsha, Inyanga, Guguletu, and Philippi to really come and listen to the presentation of the Division of Revenue Bill, Appropriations Bill. And I remember that time there was even a special appropriations bill, I'm not sure. But just to say, this is what Parliament is doing. Right? So now we're doing it in front of you. So just these are the amounts, allocations that have been made available. Of course, there are dynamics on how those funds are going to be transferred in terms of grants, equitable share, and so forth and so forth. But just to expose the community it was part and parcel of the intervention that we needed to do to try and improve the public participation. And the committee also noted, Chair, one of the most important things, the lack of effectiveness of constituency offices due to inadequate resources. That issue, Chair, is also important because it's at the center of public participation. It's also a question of how do we integrate the work that is done there at the constituency offices with the work that you do here in Parliament. How do you bring in the information and the challenges that you pick up in the constituency areas and marry them into the discourse when policies are discussed here in the committee, at the committee level? When the minister presents his presentation there, his glossary report and so forth, fancy very much. You also need to take into account and say, but minister, that report does not reflect what I have seen in my constituency. How does that graph talk to my constituency, what is happening in my constituency? You see? So that alignment and that integration is very important so that you don't allow the executive to what you call, bargain in English, to decide the agenda of your oversight, to determine the agenda of your oversight. You've got your own agenda, that's why you are here. the constituencies have entrusted you with a particular agenda on oversight. So there should be that integration, Chair. So the resources, of course, becomes an issue in those constituency offices, and how they account for those funds that are allocated to them is also an issue, of which is an issue that the Act also needs to speak to. When it comes to the Parliamentary Budget Office, Chair, I had explained earlier on that it was established in terms of the Money Bills Act, Section 15. The aim was to support the budget, the Appropriations and Finance Committee, mainly to provide independent and professional advice to those committees. And the Act goes further to say the office should have cooperative relationship with other parliamentary structures, such as research committees, legal services, and etc. And during the 6th Parliament, the office had actually outlined the following challenges, which I think is important for members to take note of, so that they can carry on looking into how these challenges are being addressed by Parliament and together with the Budget Office. One, the inability to recruit and retain the best talent and expertise. Two, the inadequate financial and human resource capacity to fulfill its governance and reporting responsibilities. And lastly, a failure to address the long-standing challenges which leads to low staff morale. Currently, Chair, the PPO co-shares the Parliamentary Administration corporate function with Parliament through a service level agreement. So the issues of HR, issues of procurement, issues of legal advice and so forth, they're shared with the, but there's a view that it wants to be solely independent from Parliament, so that that particular process does not hamstring its professional responsibility to deliver in these 4 committees. The committee recommended that the executive authority should investigate all challenges and look at how they can be resolved. There should be an early feedback meeting with the executive authority to look at the progress with this committee. So there should be a standing item on the Parliamentary Budget Office whenever this committee meets with the Executive Authority of Parliament to deal with the issues that the Parliamentary Budget Office had raised as challenges. Chair, of course, the committee also said the Executive Authority should clarify the roles and responsibilities of what we call advisory board or panel for the PPO, which consists of the chairpersons of the 4 committees, Finance and Appropriation. The committee chair, unfortunately, was not able to undertake study tour. Like I said earlier on, that it should have been one of the first activities that it should have happened to ensure that the committee is actually learning about how other committees of a similar nature operate in other countries, and how these impediments that we have seen have been resolved in those particular countries. So this committee should prioritize the study tour. Lastly but not least, the site visit to the project. The project, Chair, unfortunately, is just around, or fortunately, it's just around the corner. There are no flight tickets, there are no hotels, there are no SMTs. You just walk for oversight to see that project. Chairperson, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Domo. Honorable members, we received those presentations on the mandate and functions of this committee, its powers, and the legacy report that was presented here. Can I note hands of members who want to make contributions, or I must just start here and okay, let me note those that have raised hands. Honorable Hunsinger, Honorable Nilmay, Honorable Siwisa, Honorable Khadebe, Honorable Dagma. Is your hand up, Honourable Member? Or
Yes, Chair, it's Honorable Denner.
Honourable Daniel. Welcome and thank you so much. I want to see if we have more hands.
Are they going to be provoked by others?
Honourable Van Rooyen, you know, when all honourable members have spoken, the co-chairs can say the meeting has come to an end. So that is why I want to check. Yeah, thank you so much. Let's take the hands in that order.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, thank you through you for the presentations. I take it that this is one of the committees of higher standard, and I would really recommend and ask that we number the pages. It's really difficult to ask questions now, since we want to refer to particular pages, also slide numbers. None of the slides are numbered, which makes it very awkward, very difficult to align to what was presented. You mentioned in your presentation on recommended focus areas for this 7th Parliament of an incident that was investigated. What incident was it? You're not mentioning the incident. What incident is this? Chair, that's my only question at this stage. Thank you.
That is the fire incident.
Well, you must find it.
Apologies, Chair. Apologies, Chair. I thought I captured that fire incident.
He's right. You just said incident, and you assume, and you are forgone in your conclusion that all of us were here, who are new here.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the presentations and all the reading that we have done. There's a few questions that I want to pose, as well as checking on some legal aspects. Chair, it was interesting when the presenter said that the Secretary of Parliament did not want to present, or did not want to report to SCOPA. And when you look at the role of public accounts and you look at the functions of SCOPA, and you know, basically the most important role is overseeing the compliance with legislation as the PFMA, and monitors how taxpayers' money is spent. So you have a clause that covers that, as well as, you know, SCOPA may report on any of these financial statements. Then I recall in your presentation and in some of the presentations here that there is now, due to the sixth Parliament legacy report and the challenges that they were experiencing, this committee that was now established and is established now with these powers and functions, how are you not going to have the overlap? Because I see there's some overlap of functions. I see it from the committees themselves when they go out and present with regards to new bills, etc. What are you saying that this committee, because what I see now, that this committee is now the oversight body for Parliament. That is the Speaker, the administration, etc. So that is what this is now. And SCOPA will carry on with all the overall body of annual reports, SIU, investigations, you name it, etc., etc. So we are separating certain functions so that the administration of Parliament reports to this, which then means the Speaker is then going to present to this committee her annual report. And it will not then go to SCOPA in that line, you see. So one needs to make sure that the overlap of functions from a legalistic point of view, and that we, as this committee, then make sure that if these are the powers and functions, they must be very clear in the terms of reference and how our functions operate. Because you have your standing committees, your portfolio committees, who are doing a lot of oversight and monitoring of departments. So this specific committee, which I want to be clear in my mind, is only looking after Parliament. The Speaker and the Secretary of Parliament will report here. And this is what this committee will do, which then obviously includes the other areas, so that we don't overlap on any other committee that is also doing oversight. And whatever functions we do on outreach is not going to clash with the other committee functions of what they are doing when new bills come out, and et cetera, et cetera. That's the only things that I just wanted to make sure is the separation of powers from SCOPA, who by law is the, under the PFMA monitors taxpayers' money. So we're now saying, okay, this is the separation.
No, thank you, Chair. Chairperson, maybe because there's something that the presenter spoke about, that there is no proper format of reporting. Maybe they can make a recommendation as to when a report is presented by any body of Parliament, what are the key issues that we need to look into? Because if there's no proper template or format of reporting, it means that we are giving Parliament the liberty to put in what they want and leave out other things. So if they can give us a highlight as to what are the things that we need to actually look out to while we are waiting for a format to be worked out, but what are the key issues we need to look out to? Number two, the issue of the banning of Parliament and when it banned and when the work started is of a great concern, Chair, because in the National Assembly, I was sitting in the Portfolio Committee of DPWI. At some point, DPWI, and I'm surprised why they never shared the information with the Standing Committee, because they came to DPWI to tell us what caused the fire. It caused the havoc. To say, it means that we can simply say this is negligence from your side because you are saying that the water sprinklers were not working, the valves or something was dysfunctional. That is why the fire could spread as far as it did. Number two, my concern is about this Development Bank of South Africa. This is the same implementing agency that is dealing with the national headquarters of SAPS that is still not complete. What guarantee do we have? I think those are some of the issues that we need to ask the whoever that comes and has to come and report. Even the DPWI to come and report. What guarantee do we have? Parliament burned down in 2022. We only started to see some progress late 23-24, and we are not even speaking about renovations. We are speaking about cleaning out, not even to say this is what. So there's a possibility that the 7th administration is going to finish and that thing is not going to be finished, because I myself, as I'm sitting here, I don't have any confidence in the DPSA because of based on their lack of finishing the national headquarters of SAPS in Tshwane. It's still not finished. It's a program that started somewhere in the 5th administration. In the 6th administration, still, even the one building that we went to do oversight over as DPWI was still not finished. It went to such an extent that in this administration, the report that came out is that people had to be evacuated because the place is not conducive for anyone to sit in it. Nobody can sit there. So what confidence are we going to have that DPSA is going to do what needs to be done? Thank you, Chair.
Kader.
Thank you, Honorable Chairpersons, Co-Chairpersons, and evening, all the members in the meeting. I think that, first of all, I'd like to appreciate the legacy report. That's what I was able to get on, because I don't know what the researcher said before me, before I came into the meeting. But I think that the legacy report is basically reflecting what transpired in the 6th administration. But what is critical, Chairperson, is the issues which must be followed up. I'll implore upon this committee that all these issues which are raised by the legacy report must be followed. The first one which must be dealt with is the issue of dealing with the funding of Parliament. Parliament is not a department. Parliament is the arm of state. So it means that basically what we must do is that the Parliament cannot depend upon the executive on how much allocation it's going to get. Because it's like just saying that we're going to ask a policeman to police himself. No, we cannot afford that. I think that that project of dealing with the issue of the funding of Parliament is very critical. So that one will also translate to the issues of oversight. Because one, what are the very important functions of Parliament? One is to make the laws. Two, in the lawmaking process, is the issue of the public participation. That one is a constitutional imperative. We cannot short-circuit that. But if you can look thoroughly on all the various portfolio committees and select committees, look at their budget. If there's only one bill, you look at there's only going to be a single public participation process and the entire budget is exhausted. So it means that basically the Parliament is not going to be able to execute its mandate. So that issue of pursuing the funding of Parliament is very critical. And then apart from the issue of public participation is the issue of the oversight. One of the critical functions of Parliament is to oversight the executive. So when you look at the budget of the executive, it's very huge indeed. You look at the budget of Parliament, just like the issue of permit alone, it basically depletes the funds of Parliament so that it cannot do its job. So I think that as a constitutional imperative, we must really pursue what was dealt with by the 6th Parliament. And then when coming to the issue of the fire, it is true that we have to be hands-on in dealing with that aspect so that we are going to be able to hold the executive authority accountable. Because where the executive authority does not go to any portfolio committee, is not called even in the National Assembly or in the NCOP to come and account there. So the only mechanism of the executive authority, that is the Speaker and the National Council of Provinces, where they can account, is in this committee. So I think that what is critical here is that we must harness our energy in such a way that we deal with that. But when coming to this issue of the fire of Parliament, the issue of the restoration of Parliament is very important. We just have to look at other countries, how they dealt with. I will just make an example. When the Paris Cathedral burned down, actually what happened there is that it was not done by even, there was a special bill which was prepared for the restoration of the Paris Cathedral, so that we have to go and learn about those things. So the issue of learning from other countries, how the parliamentarians oversight Parliament itself, because we cannot have an institution which is not oversighted. So I think that one is very critical. So that's why I agree with the legacy report, which is in front of us, that we must prioritize that, but we're not going to exhaust that today. But in the program, Chair, as we roll it out with your able hands, we'll be able to deal with that.
Thank you, co-chairs. Just to be very brief, I mean, listening to the legacy report and the contributions of colleagues here, I really think that one cannot emphasize enough the importance of this committee. And if you look at things that we're reading about, that were talked about in the 5th administration, 6th administration, things that were not implemented. And I think it's really going to depend on our co-chairs, really leading us, being bold. I'm not necessarily saying being aggressive, but when you read in the reports here that, there was a report, I think, from the previous speaker that there'd been discussions with the Treasury, and those discussions were going well, but the committee never ever got a report. So I think we must, really mandate our co-chairs to be bold and to be aggressive where necessary, because otherwise, we're not going to achieve much. It seems we have to amend a law. I didn't realize that this committee is going to have to actually get into amending a law. But this financial management of Parliament, it seems that we can't deal with the regulations until we've amended the law. So that's any law is a serious task. I think we have agreed here that we're going to postpone the other 2 sessions. But I'm not sure if we can't try and combine the rest of the induction with a bit of a strategic plan so that we really start looking at the key elements. I think all this work around the budget office is critical, and it seems to me that in terms of, even though the Constitution talks about legislation for money bills, amending them, and even though we've got a law to amend money bills, we still haven't amended one single money bill for like 25 years. And we hear that that is languishing somewhere in the Rules Committee. So surely this committee needs to take an interest in where are we with the process to actually amend money bills. I endorse what's been sent by my colleague Khadebe on the left, that you cannot have the executive dictating to Parliament what its budget should be. I think the situation is completely, should be the other way around. I, in fact, have a view that Parliament itself should be the key initiator of budgets for all executive departments. But at the moment, it's the other way around. I know it's not an easy task, but that issue has been raised, the role of the PBO and how we support them. And then lastly, on the renovation, I think we also need to, besides the building, I don't know if colleagues have heard this whole issue of the dome. I mean, I'm sitting in programming and with the speaker and the Chief Whips Forum and all of this, and we're all meeting in the marquee at the moment, right? We saw the wind the other day and all of that. There is supposed to be a dome that was used for the late Comrade Madiba's funeral. It's a physical, more of a semi-permanent structure that is supposed to be put up there, supposed to be ready for the state of the nation. So there's a lot of uncertainties around the process of getting the dome to replace the marquee, and that's going to be there for 2 years practically until the Parliament is reconstructed. So I just think we must mandate our chairs to be aggressive. We must have a regular meeting time and really look at the key priorities for this 4 years. So I think we could make this quite a dynamic committee, and a committee that is taken seriously. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Chairpersons. Let me just apologize for arriving late. I think Bafana broke Cape Town's traffic. Thank you also for the legacy report. I just want to confirm, because I can't believe it. Did I hear correctly that this committee in the 6th Parliament did not get the report on the incident with the fire or the outcomes, and also this committee did not get the total costs of the rebuild either? Chair, how is that possible? It seems to me that this committee was undermined in the 6th administration, and I want to plead with both of you that we do not allow that in this administration. It cannot be that the Committee on the Financial Management of Parliament has still not, after nearly more than 2 years, received a report on what happened with the burning down of Parliament. And also that we do not have a number of what the total rebuild is going to cost us. The same goes for the dome as well. It's not part of the legacy report, but my colleague, the Honourable Dugmore, thank you. This day was very long. Honourable Dugmore mentioned the dome as well. We cannot seem, in the Chief Whips Forum or the Programming Forum, to get a number of what the dome is going to cost Parliament in total. We need to know that. We don't have money to throw around, and it's our responsibility to do proper oversight over the management of Parliament's finances. So I think we should also please put pressure on that issue as well, so we can get a number. And then, Chair, yeah, I have questions about the demolition of the burnt down building. It seems to me like they're breaking it down brick by brick, and there must be a faster and more cost-effective way. But I'll keep that for later meetings. I just wanted to state that. Thank you, Chairs.
Thank you so much. The last speaker is Honourable Van Rijn, and I see that
Thank you very much.
Honourable Douglas is also triggered. So, by the mercy of the chair, you are allowed.
Chair, thank you very much. Thank you also for the presentation that in my take served as a diagnostic report, which paints a very unfortunate and unacceptable situation. And I think I'll want to take from the submission of the previous speaker and summarize my own observation by saying, proper English, they say this committee somehow, based on what you have presented to this committee, it has been somehow emasculated or castrated from doing its work. Though castrated is a bit harsh, but the reality of the matter is that no, fortunately I've checked the parliamentary dictionary. There's nothing like that. But the reality of the matter is that it's clear that this committee is not meant to function. I mean, since the enactment of the FMPPLA, we are speaking of something that happened in 2009, and there's no tangible impact that can be referred to. So it's very clear that the fact that this committee depends on the same leadership of Parliament that the committee must hold accountable to get it effective is somehow disadvantaging or rendering the essence of this committee useless. Now, Chair, it's also wrong for us to expect a miracle to happen, because I think listening to other members, it seems as if we are still expecting the same approach that was employed by previous administration or those MPs who came before us to be employed to resolve this situation. I don't think that is going to yield. And I've got a simple suggestion, Chair, because when you start hearing that a committee recommended to Parliament that the Parliament must give us clear time frames for a review process of the act that is empowering this committee, then it tells you that if you are waiting for Parliament, you'll wait forever. My submission to this collective is that it's this committee, and I think someone said it correctly when he submitted that we are relying on the leadership of this committee to champion the cause of doing things differently. If not, we'll continue to sit in this. But also, what is also disturbing is as if meeting for this committee is a by-the-way thing. It comes after, I don't know, what happened. It's as if the people are doing this committee a favor to do its work. It's not scheduled, it's not there in the schedule of Parliament. We are squeezed. Now we are holding night vigils and, I really don't know. It seems as if this committee is set up to fail. So if we want to get this thing right, Chair, the act that must be reviewed is the first weapon that we'll have to get right. But also, as correctly cited by members, we need to finalize our strat plan, but we can't wait for the strat plan to be finalized because there are agent issues that need our attention. I mean, as we speak, the project of rebuilding the Parliament is ongoing. You can't wait for a strat plan. This committee has got a mandate legislatively. It's a standing committee, and I think it was properly captured. It's empowered by law to exist. No one is doing us a favor to exist. So we really need to be seized with this process to understand exactly how the resources that are committed or allocated to Parliament are used. But also, Chair, there are few agent areas that need to be attended while we are still waiting for the issue of the strat plan. You see, you made mention of the funding model of PARMET. And this is something that has been, this is more of a perennial thing, and it's banal. Because here I think EFF, when they came in here, they were very loud on dealing with this matter. I don't know how far did it go. Now here it's sitting now, we are all confessing. I mean, through our submission, the previous administration also confessed that this is the biggest resource leakage in this institution. So it's urgent. But as you presented it, I think you took it for granted that we all understand this funding model. For the purpose of induction, I thought we'll go deeper and explain to members, what is this, how is this funding model structured? And how is it impacting adversely to the current financial status of this institution? I think that will help a lot for members, but this is induction. So as when we start discussing this thing, we don't move from a point that things that we are all conversant with the model itself. So I think these two things, to me, they are very, very urgent, Chair. While we are still waiting for a detailed strat plan, we need to, but also the reviewal of this particular act. We need to look into how immediately, Chair, out of this induction, how do we resolve on monitoring the project of rebuilding of Parliament, but also how we deal with the PARMET thing, because it's an agent thing and it's costing this Parliament a lot of money. So I will request that, Chair, if we can prioritize those two issues and obviously start the process of reviewing this act. But if we are going to rely on Parliament, I think as MPs we have to go an extra mile. Maybe we should commit more to these night vigils so as we are able to deal with this issue. Because if we are not going to do that, we are still going to be referred to as a committee that recommended, without anything tangible coming out of our recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Douglas.
Thank you, Honourable Chair and Honourable Chairs. I think mine is going to be short and sweet. I think my main problem is that I don't see that this committee really has teeth. It doesn't really have teeth, and we need to define the teeth before we can even move forward. It's one thing to say we're overseeing the implementation of the FMPPLA, but what does that actually mean if we can't hold people accountable? And we can't, and the policy isn't there for accountability from the Parliament side. I have a problem also with the BINT building. It really is looking like there's a problem there because it's taken so long. And in my experience with construction industry, if it's taking too long, it means there's cost overruns. It means we're paying much more than we should be paying for things. It means that there's there's opportunity for corruption, misspending, and for people to get little brown envelopes to make things happen. So for me, a major thing, there should be a report on our desk around this as soon as possible, around the parliamentary building, around what happened, and then the construction process, how long it's going to take, who's involved, what the costings is involved, and then all those things that we can have a forensic look at it from a committee point of view. Also, one of the key things that I saw in the report was there's a lack of the filling of certain vacancies in the administration, which affects the running of the institution and affects our ability to work as MPs and as an institution. So I think a large portion of our focus should also be on how do we fill those as soon as possible, where the problem is for those filling of those key administrative positions, which then helps Parliament to move forward. And then, yeah, I think that there definitely needs to be a better structure to allow Parliament to report to this, and then for us to be able to hold them accountable. And that would mean a policy discussion that we need to have. And we need to then look at that act that already exists and how do we improve it so that we can basically hold the executive and parliamentary leadership accountable. I think I'm going to leave it there, Chairs, just to shorten it. But thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. The last speaker is Honorable Clark. You did not have to raise your hand. I was going to call you to speak either way.
Did you now wanted to speak, Chair? Thank you very much, and thank you for the information that's been given to us. In terms of the report of Parliament and the construction and where we're at, and are we at the level of penalty clauses in terms of construction, in terms of timeframes, I don't think that, and with due respect, I don't think we have the ability in this portfolio to do a forensic investigation, but I do think we must call for an independent investigation, because if we do that and there's fraud and corruption happening, then we will definitely get to the root of that cause by doing that. But I mean, I think you know, government is famous for dragging out projects and then costing us double to what it should cost us, and it would be very interesting to see if we're already at the penalty clause phase in terms of the construction of Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Ndlovu.
No, Chair, thanks very much. I think covered by honourable members. I think what is important that honourable members are indicating is to make sure that we emphasize the issue of accountability. And if we don't, particularly to two of us sitting here, to say members are saying we are relying on you, please, you must do your best to make sure that you do justice in making sure that the executive account. And what is also the crucial part that we must do as early as tomorrow, if possible, the issue of the site visit to the project, because it's one of the issues that members have saying in terms of the report, the presentation, they have not received, I mean the 6th Parliament have not received the report in terms of the project of the that Parliament, the incident. So, Chair, I think, and you must also emphasize the issue of the study tour, so that we can also, you know, find a way of trying to understand on how other committees are doing in other countries, as members are saying, as per the presentation, because it will also assist us. Remember, some of us were new on this, so we don't want to find ourselves doing something that is not aligned. Yes, there are recommendations that we must also look at But we must make sure that whatever that we do, it is within the ambit of the law and also focusing on the legislation. And we'll also be assisted by yourselves so that we don't find ourselves as people who are bigger than even anybody in Parliament. You know, sometimes when you are with in these committees, when people are talking, you know, you've got powers, you must do 1, 2, 3. So sometimes you you think that you are more than any other person, and you forget even your own responsibilities. So I think we will try our best, honourable members, to see how best can we make sure that we do what you are asking us to do, and also looking at what happened in the 6th Parliament that we couldn't maybe try to find a way of bringing a report to you in the next meeting. And I think the other part that also Honorable Van Rooyen have also indicated that I think all, in myself will also agree to that, you know, is to say if we try to find a space, even if in the evening, whereby we can be able to engage. Honorable Van Rooyen, we had a meeting ourselves, meeting the staff, myself and the co-chair, the first meeting. That is why we fund this kind of the induction workshop now. Since we have been elected, it's not that we have not done much or we are neglecting our responsibilities. So the programming committee will also look at what is it that we will also want to do. But the situation that we find ourselves in now, it is allowing us to say, we wanted to request you, I think you were here when we were saying, let's try to have a session now, and then during the week we just have a pause, and then we'll come back next year. You know, considering that we'll come up with many things that we'll know that there will not be any excuses of saying why our meetings are not programmed. So it's not something that we are saying they are not taking us serious. It is how and when we were elected, and we're also looking at how best can we be able to make sure that there's a communication, we'll give you information, we don't just take you for granted. I think, Chair, with those few words, I just want to pause there. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Chairperson Ndlovu. Honorable members, let me, because I think what we should do is we are moving towards the end of the meeting. So the last thing that we are going to do after I shall have given my remarks is to allow the presenters to give us a rounding of what the right the right of reply, not necessarily to regurgitate what honorable members have said. First of all, let me thank the presenters for having been frank and candid with their presentations and the issues that this committee has to confront. And also thank the honorable members for their contribution. I think all of us are at one that the committee must not be ceremonial. The committee has to do its work in a very, very robust way. And number two, that we are enjoined by the Constitution of the Republic as a committee overseeing Parliament to make sure that Parliament performs the functions that are enshrined in the Constitution, which is lawmaking, which is playing oversight and public participation. So, and honorable members have declared here that for Parliament to successfully do oversight, it means it has to be resourceful. And the funding model will have to be reformed so that Parliament can be enhanced to do that work. And there is a list, honorable members, of outstanding activities that have to be attended to very promptly. Number one, this matter is constitutional. When you have a committee and you call it a joint standing committee on financial management of Parliament, and by now I guess all of us, we understand what by definition of the law of the Republic Parliament means. When the two houses of Parliament meet separately, neither of them becomes Parliament. Neither of them becomes Parliament because they are meeting separately. And that is why when the NCOP does its business, no, yes, I'm just talking to the title of an act. The title of an act does not say a joint standing committee on the financial management of the NCOP or of the National Assembly. It says Parliament, very specific. And so I listen to you, Domo, when you say, and Tleki, when you say, after this committee has met, one report will be presented twice, separately, in the NCOP and in the National Assembly. What happens if one house rejects that report? So we are not a joint standing committee for the NCOP. And we are not a joint standing committee for the National Assembly. We are for Parliament. So it means there is a blurring of lines somewhere. So and the safest way and to avoid unnecessary litigation of our processes, it means the report of this committee requires a joint sitting. That is the only time you have Parliament. It's something that we need to correct very quickly. I don't know if we are going to do it through the rules. I have not adequately applied myself to what is contained in the Act. What does the Act say? Where do the reports of the committee go? When the committee has done its work, what does the Act say the reports? Yes, because if the reports of this committee, which in terms of national legislation is for Parliament and it's not for a separate House of Parliament, but the report is presented separately to the Houses of Parliament, it's something that will not stand the test of legality. If we are challenged to say, okay, NCOP, Khadebe, Ndlovu, Siwisa, you have adopted this. Whose report is this? Where do you have authority in terms of, where do you derive the mandate in terms of the law? Or what is the source of authority that empowers you to adopt a report which is not your report? Let's look at that one, honorable members. I think we have time to think about it if there is a legislative process that has to ensue. Let's make sure that such a process ensues and we correct the mistakes that are there, because what it means, previous activities are unconstitutional, the previous activities of this committee. That's what the appropriate interpretation of the law would mean, that if there is any report of this committee which served at the NCOP or at the National Assembly, that was unconstitutional. Yes, that's where we are now. But it's not something which must put us into paralysis. It must not deject us. Yes, we need to have courage and say, look, it's a hurdle that we must overcome. and quickly find the executive and alert them about this, to say, in its enactment, this is a joint standing committee of Parliament. And for sure, there is a definition in the list of acronyms or abbreviations. I believe that the word Parliament has been explained what it means. Yeah. And then let's move on. I think the issue of conducting oversight or monitoring on the restoration project, it's something that we may have to, first of all, even before we visit the site, we will have to request a report first from the executive and circulate the report amongst members. Members study the report and we agree on a date on which we will do the site visit. So it means the report must be two. First, we must have that report of because if you say you give us a legacy report, and in your legacy report you say we have never received a report on the cause of the fire and the outcomes. We just see that on television. As a committee, it means we don't have a report. Even if there was a report to the 6th Administration Committee, we are a committee of the 7th term. We must still be finished with that report. We study it and we understand the work that was done by the 6th Administration, and yeah, where do we go with or how do we carry the work forward? So those two reports will then be very important. First, the report on the causes and the outcomes, and then the second report will be on the project, which will also include the project schedule, the envisaged completion dates. If there are cost escalations, we must know there have been cost escalations, by what percentages, and how does that affect the allocations of Parliament, or how does that affect we are not going to be able to conduct oversight on the executive if ourselves, as Parliament, we are unable to complete our own project. How do we stand in public there and say, this mayor or this municipality, this department is failing to deliver houses to you? And the public says, what about yourselves? You are meeting in a tent. When the wind blows, you run away like birds. And now you come and say, so-and-so is not completing their projects. Eh? No. It does not matter. You might not have run. You might not have run because you were expecting there will be compensation. Because our problems are not the same. To some of us, our problems can be solved financially. But look, and I hear the concerns of the members about the dome. I think the last time the informal report that we had was that the dome would have been erected by the end of September. And it has not even started. The erection has not started, so I don't know. And it's not only the marquee which gives us problems. Even Good Hope is very small. We squirm in there. we have problems of ventilation. I don't think that it's a conducive environment that Parliament finds itself in now, having to do work under such circumstances. We have to make sure that if it is still a possibility that the dome is erected, it must be erected, and we must know when the erection will be completed. Yeah, I think that the other issues, honorable members, are the issues of organizational realignment. Should be the issues that we should deal with when we have our formal engagement with the executive. We must come out very sharply on the issue of public participation. I think previously there should have been suggestions on an ideal constituency office model. How do we run our constituency offices? But do South Africans understand what a constituency office is? Or the impression that has been created about a constituency office, does that help a citizen? Are these parliamentary constituency offices, or are they party outlets by the way South Africans see them? Do they understand that they are parliamentary offices? That is not the understanding that we get when we are on the ground. Because you hardly see Parliament branding or any insignia or anything that identifies with Parliament at those offices. And the people who are there, who are working there at those offices, are not employees of Parliament, are employees of political parties. So, yeah, that is one problem that we will have to deal with. And honorable members have also raised issues here with regard to the separation of powers, which must also be expressed in financial terms. That Parliament cannot be funded like it's a state department or an entity of a department. It is an arm. There must be equality of arms. I don't know whether by implication members must also say that must also be the case for the judiciary, but that is subconscious. But what is being said here, without saying many other things, is that there must be equality of arms between the trias politica. I think we have heard that when we come to engage with the executive, we should be able to raise those things so that. And I agree with the thrust of comments that members have made, because I sit in appropriations with Honorable Neil May and Honorable Douglas, I think. Where does the budget process start? I mean, for an ordinary South African, where does the budget process start and when does it end? And what opportunities are there for an ordinary South African to input on the budget process? Individually or in an organized form, in a village or in a township. The budget process has started. We want to get your inputs. Where and how do we give our inputs as South Africans? If we sit here as Parliament, members of parliament complain about the budget process, you can imagine it must be worse for an ordinary citizen. Yeah. So those are the issues that we will have to look at. And we must look at those issues, honorable members, within the realities that we face as a country. There are very, very serious fiscal pressures, very serious constraints and constrictions on our budget. It may be something that we start now as the 7th administration, and which may not be realized by us, because it means we must start with legislation first. Put legislation in place, put policies and regulations on how a separate process is going to be provided for the funding of the legislature and its activities, including the institutions of parliament. Committees have to do oversight, but they cannot do oversight because they are hamstrung by the limitations that are there. So these are very, very serious matters, and for sure, all of us understand and agree that, Honorable Dagmo, they're not only serious, they are controversial and vexatious, and they are going to need a lot of courage on our part as honorable members to raise them so that this committee can rise and stand the test of time. We are being called upon to do the work that were instructed by the relevant act, FMPPLA. So can we stand upright and speak on behalf of this act, which has been passed by Parliament? As honourable members say that this is an act of 2009. The organizational realignment of the legislature, I think, is very critical, but also to check with regard to gender and equity targets. Is Parliament meeting that? It's law in this country, and I haven't had any of the presenters talking about equity targets. I'm reminded of that because this morning when we met with one entity, the delegation was all male but one female. It's something that we need to take very, very serious. Yeah. Other than those issues that the Secretariat and the presenters would have captured, I think honorable members have spoken a mouthful. Maybe the last would be that the scheduling of our committee meetings has to be given a serious attention. Like Honorable Van Ryan has said, we can't meet as a by-the-way committee of Parliament. In fact, if we were to follow the logic, we should be saying that this committee is the godfather of all committees of Parliament, but we don't want to say that. What we want to say is that the committee must be given a proper space and time. We can't meet as if our meetings are optional. Yeah. No. I think I've tried to speak to a number of issues that honorable members have raised. I'm going to give to you presenters not to restart the presentations, but just to give your impression of what you heard from the honorable members. I think as they were giving their remarks, they were also directing on what work has to be done. Thank you.
Good afternoon once more, honorable members. I would like to respond to your question, honorable, about the SCOPA. This was the reason that this committee was established and the act promulgated in 2009. It's because the secretary to Parliament then, way before 2009, refused to come and account to SCOPA because SCOPA was tempted to hold Parliament accountable. Because that POA, that Parliamentary Oversight Authority, it looks like it was weaker in holding Parliament accountable. Then SCOPA was tempted to hold Parliament accountable, of which there was no law that prescribed that Parliament should account to SCOPA. Till today, there's no law that prescribes Parliament to account to SCOPA. And there was no legislation that guides Parliament as to how it should spend its finances. Then Parliament sometimes it chose to take the provisions from PFMA or to the Parliamentary Administration Act. It was spending money in that way, but there was no legal framework that was guiding Parliament as to how to manage its finances. Then this committee was established because the Secretary to Parliament then refused to come to account to SCOPA. And the POA also, it looked weaker in terms of holding Parliament accountable. Then this committee doesn't have to account to SCOPA at all. A Parliament doesn't have to account to SCOPA at all. The only committee that accounts to it is this committee, according to the Act.
Yeah, but the input does not end there because the input further says that there are other standing committees.
Yes.
So in this haze of legislative uncertainty, the reform process must be informed by aspects or complexities like those. For instance, when you say that there must be a separate funding model for Parliament, in the legal process, the whole realm, what then becomes the role of the Standing Committee of Appropriations? It's a Standing Committee of Parliament, including the Standing Committee of Finance. There must be clear roles. SCOPA, we understand, is not empowered to do that because there is the Standing Committee on the Financial Management of Parliament. There cannot be parallels. But then it means there is going to be, there must be a consequential processes with regard to certain standing committees, appropriations in particular. Yes, because it means its scope will then have to expand. I had one honorable member, I can't remember if it was Dagmo or who said no. In fact, the genesis of the budget process must be Parliament because the executive derives its mandate from Parliament. Parliament is the highest locus of power. The people who are in the executive are first elected to serve as members of Parliament before they become the executive. That is the understanding that I got. Yeah, but we're not brainstorming now. I'm just saying that must be the kind of the understanding that you have to say that it must not only be SCOPA that is brought to the equation. By implication, other standing committees are going to be affected by such a reform process?
Yes, Chair. I think also the act, this Act of Financial Management of Parliament, then it also provides for budget process, which means I think is separate from the money bill process, which means Parliament should not follow the same process. That's why the Lomo said in the legacy report, we have an issue also with the budget process. So it should not be guided by the money bills process. The same way it should have its own process, separately from the process that the departments that submit to. Then Parliament should have its own. And the Act has got provision for that the budget process should be started. But there is no details as to how they can execute it. These are details. The instruments, which means we need more regulations to guide as to how to proceed with the budget process in the Act.
Yeah, no, thanks, Co-Chair, for the detailed questions from honourable members in the evening, and they sounded so energetic. You would swear that it's in the morning, the way they kept those questions coming to us. Honourable members, we are not accounting officers of Parliament. We're here to support this committee. We're here to assist this committee to trigger issues of importance that this committee needs to rope into its own agenda and programs going forward. I think our report has really identified issues that we can say what should be the quick wins for this committee going forward. I think that's the understanding that when we came here, we needed to first establish. Right, the number of issues that have been raised, some of the issues that have been raised fall squarely within the ambit of the Executive Parliament. And this particular meeting, it's the workshop that aims to prepare members to engage with the Executive. We, as the support, may not have answers on certain issues that falls within the ambit of the Executive. But as the committee engages with the Executive, when it raises some of these things, the Executive will be able to elaborate further on that. Of course, there are issues that we need to take home as well as support for further investigation and further research so that we can empower the committee going forward. But we won't have all the answers in all these issues. With me, Chair, I've got my manager sitting there at the back, Mr. Mkaji, who will also come in to assist us in responding to some of the questions because he has been with this committee for the 2 previous terms. I always like to tap into his experience as well for the benefit of this committee, so that it's a conversation for all of us. Particularly on the issue of the permit, Mr. Mklaji, the issue of the permit that Mr. Van Rooyen has raised. I'd like you to deal with it, that one specifically. The issue of scheduling meetings, also that has been raised, is an issue, co-chairs, that I've raised myself when I was appointed to assist in this committee. And I raised it together with the issue of staffing for this committee. That if this committee is taken serious, why is it that we are all standing in? Most of us are standing in. Most of us support staff. There is no permanent appointment for this committee. Because that's the first area of focus that brings stability in the committee through support. Because members can change anytime, can go after 5 years, but staff remain to carry on with the issues when the new members come. And staff, it's one of the important issues that this committee has to also to deal with. You know, the support, the permanent support staff for this committee is an issue that needs to be taken on board. So the issue really of scheduling of meeting is a problem that we've also raised. Chair, on the issue of the equity target for Parliament, I think also this is the issue that Parliament Executive will be best placed to address. But I know for the fact that in some of the interview panels that one has been part of in different units, there has been that issue. That issue has been discussed at length. There has been a deliberate attempt also to ensure that there is balance in terms of different equity target. But the executive can give more on that particular issues. The issue around the start of the budget, co-chairs, that you're raising is a very important issue, especially with regards to the debate and discussion on the reforms that needs to happen for Parliament to be funded accordingly as a distinct arm of state. For me, Chair, it's not an issue that we can resolve it here now, but it's an issue to ponder on as support, but also as members of Parliament, to think about and really take it up even when it comes to that study tour visit. It could be also part and parcel of the package that can also be investigated. And it's an issue that requires more than just ourselves and the committee to look into. It's a very important reform because you look at the literature of how budget used to be managed in the 18th centuries. Literature will tell you that Parliament was the one that was appropriating and allocating monies to government departments. But as the arm of government, the executive grew in leaps and bounds, the parliaments, legislatures at that time then ran out of capacity to can develop budget for all those different portfolios. So the executive then took advantage of that and claimed and took the powers of developing budget and so on and so on. And therefore now, when you say Parliament has to assert itself in terms of resources, it's a different ballgame altogether. It's the same as the issue of amending the budget, co-chairs, on the other side of your of your committees. You know, amending the budget, it's good, it's nice to have it in the legislation, but is it practical? What are those conditions that are put there in the legislations mean in terms of the amendment? You are given that power to amend the budget through the Amendments Bills Act, but at the same time, when you look at the conditions, they make it nearly impossible for that amendment to be effected. You look at the time frames, you know, in between when the minister needs to respond and Parliament and so forth, it makes it nearly impossible for that particular exercise to happen. So I'm just teasing these things so that members can also think deeper. The issue of the format, Honorable Sewisa, look, it's one could say pretty much the same format as your sector department's report, but because programs are designed in the same manner, and therefore budget are also designed in the same manner. What we are calling for here is a consistent reporting framework, a well-established reporting framework that each term of Parliament and each Secretary of Parliament, when it comes, he will find it there. And it should form part of the legislation. So it should form part of the review of the Act, that it will prescribe that an annual report of Parliament of RSA should consist of these sections: the economic classifications in this format, programs in that format, financial information, non-financial information, and therefore the template issue can be discussed later because that's your nut and bolt. But the broad framework should be outlined in the Act to say this is what we need so that you can have a consistent reporting framework. Whether the leadership of Parliament changes, and it will remain the same. So I think that's what the point that we were trying to make. The issue around duplication, overlaps, Honourable Member, overlaps will often happen. You would have overlaps also happening in sector departments. If you have we have overlaps in sector departments, we also have overlaps in Parliament happening, because committees in Parliament are overseeing those departments. Human Settlement Department is responsible for housing, But Department of Water Affairs, through, Water Services Authority, needs to instill water in that particular area. Electricity needs to come in. Social development also comes in. So that's why we always encourage an issue of collaboration, where there are common interests in committees in particular, where you can identify as finance committee and appropriations committee areas of common interest, or as sector committees, go in collaboration to engage with those particular stakeholders that needs to address those issues, so that you actually provide what we call synergic oversight, and it becomes even more solid in that manner, because the executive can't go to this one and say something else and come to the other one and say something different. So the collaboration try to mitigate that particular overlaps and duplication. The issue of the DPSA, well, Chair, I think that matter also can be dealt with by the Executive of Parliament, because they are the ones who are well vested with regards to all the details as to what informed the appointment of the DPSA and what has led to the delays and shifting of the deadlines from the 2025 to 2026. What are the details there, the integrities, and what are the remedial actions going forward? And what has costed Parliament through those delays? And whether we're on a penalty clause stage of the project or not, we can't tell, but all that we can say is that this committee has not been given a report of that project. Neither it has been given a chance to do oversight or site visit. Now, the starting point for this committee would be to have a briefing with the executive authority on that project, a briefing that gives details on what has happened, what transpired. The report also on investigation is an important element, because it then informs you as to what are the loopholes in the entire system of Parliament in the precinct that needs to be addressed, because those issues also need to be addressed together with what is happening, some of them with what is happening in the building of that project. Because you'll build that project and complete it, but if you have not addressed some of these weaknesses, systematic weaknesses that led to the fire, damaging the property, you would still have another fire in the next years, and you won't be able to stop it. So I think at that point, on that one, I can pause there on the TPSA. The public participation, oversight issues. I think some of the issues were comments, which would be, of course, some of them will take them back to our respective unit as well and dig deeper where we can. I like the proposal that is made about the Paris Cathedral, where there was a bill that was actually initiated to ensure that things are done differently. That's why I was saying in my presentation, with regards to the Parliament project like this, you've got to do things differently. You have an experience, honorable members, in your respective portfolio committees. You have assessed infrastructure in various areas. You've seen the weaknesses. You've seen the problems there. Now, this one is in your doorstep. You've got an experience on those. You've got to leverage on that experience and say, how do we prevent this one of ours from falling into the same trap where in Free State we had this particular problem, in Limpopo, and so forth and so forth. So the issue of real-time audit, for instance, which is made as a recommendation by the report, is an important one. Because it will, I'm not saying it will solve all your problems there, but at least 75% of your problems would have been dealt with, because I know that the AG now has started introducing what you call performance audit as well. So you can also tap into that as part and parcel of ensuring that there's good governance, there's safeguarding of those billions that are going to be spent there, to ensure that there is a value for money and there is assessment on a regular basis of what has been done in terms of the milestones that were projected vis-a-vis the budget, the correlation and the relationship between spending and the achievement of target, what are the shortfalls, if there are any, and how are they going to be addressed. So it's an important low-hanging fruit, and it's one of those things that, Chair, the committee might as well say, Well, look, if we meet with the Executive of Parliament, we are going to have standing items on our agenda, right? We're going to have the building of Parliament as a standing item, irrespective of the agenda that we're going to discuss. Whether they come to table a first quarter report, it's okay, it's fine. But as a standing, we've got a standing item, which is the building project. We need a briefing on that, right? We've got a standing item on public participation. We need a briefing on that as a way of phasing in your legacy report resolutions into the process as well. Because I can tell you, the executive will come and confuse you with all sort of things and graphs and big reports with all overloaded information, and then you get lost in the process. Now, the legacy report gives you a first step to say, oh, whatever that will come with is okay, but here, this is where we are. These are our matters arising from the Sixth Parliament. Let's deal with them before we move forward and close the chapter. What else? And the issue of when does the budget start, co-chairs, what I'm going to do, I'll share with you a budget calendar which I developed for the Select Committee on Appropriations, which details when does the budget process start from the executive side, who are involved, who are the stakeholders, up to the legislative side. There are 4 stages of the budget process. The executive, where they develop those proposals, those MTech committees sit, mid-combat committees, the cabinet, and so forth and so forth. It's a whole lot of process, but it's contained in that particular budget calendar. I'll send it to members for their benefit. Then you will be able to then detect and dissect, to say, as we think about the reforms of extricating Parliament from the appropriations bill, then where do we locate Parliament process in the mainstream of the Money Bills Act process vis-a-vis what the PFLA, the Act of Parliament is also saying? It's important to look at that. The report to the committees. Well, Chair, I think the issue of reporting to the house, different houses by the co-chairs has been a standard practice. When I came here, there was a joint budget committee which had co-chairs, 2 co-chairs, one from the NCOP and one from the NA. So that was a standard practice. I don't remember any law says that must be done in terms of the law. But I think it's one of the issues that can be taken to the review process for this legislation. I'm happy that the chair has raised it, but it's one of the issues that because the Act is Parliament Act, says it's Parliament Committee. It's not the NA committee or the NCOP committee. It's something that we need to also to think about as we take the law to the review, look into it, because then it says, if you're going to report in separate houses, you are not disaggregating the Parliament as an institution. So it's an important point, Chair. And Chair, I hope I've managed to cover as much questions I could. So Mr. Mkachi will deal with the permit question, Chair. Thank you very much.
Good evening, co-chairs. Look, the issue of a permit, Chair, it was, I think last Parliament, we engaged National Treasury with regard to that as a committee, and then National came and present. But we can provide the details of that, and also when the committee meet with the, because still you have to meet with the Parliament, with the sections of Parliament, FMO, for example, they can pose those questions, they can get the details around with that issue from the Parliament. Yes.
Parliament has a board, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, and
we will invite them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And have a session with them in the absence of any other person. We want them to, including some of our honorable members who sit in that board. They will come and and account. I think we have exhausted the issues, honourable members. Honourable Msinga.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, at the end of this meeting now, I would want to propose that one of the next sessions be devoted to a strategic session, as colleague Darkmore suggested. We've heard a lot, and I think we've got a lot to work through, but that we please create an opportunity to add on the list which you already shared with us, which I think is very valuable and give us great leadership and guidance, but to then please create the opportunity where we could add to that in the future, a couple of hours on that, please, Chair.
Yes, thank you so much. Domo.
Just one last thing, Chair. Chair, I think in some of the issues that are raised in the legacy report, Chair, it's important to, as co-chairs develop their program, to note that there are instances where you need to invite more than one stakeholder to deal with a particular issue. For instance, National Treasury and Parliament on the issue of permit. It's important for both of them to be under one roof at some point so that you can get to the bottom of the matter. That's one. Two, around the issue also of the budget allocation, Treasury and Parliament, because I know that the process between the former speakers and the late ministers of finance had been ongoing for the past.
Yeah, no, I hear what you are saying, but remember, we are playing oversight on Parliament. So let's meet with Parliament and its entities. For instance, the Board of Permit is not a board of the Treasury. It's a board that Parliament, it's a creature of Parliament. So let them come here, Parliament. If there is any other entity, we meet them, and when we have met them, we discuss. For instance, the issue of the separation of the budget process. It's not going to be driven by us. It must be, remember, we do a report, we take a report to Parliament, not the National Assembly. We do a report to Parliament, and Parliament will then adopt its report, and then the leadership of Parliament will then have to implement the decisions of Parliament. That is how it should work. But whoever it will be necessary for us to meet, we will meet them. But for a start, let's invite the executive of Parliament and the entities that are creatures of Parliament. Honourable members, we had deferred the minutes of the meeting of the 1st of November 2024. I would like us to quickly run through the minutes. On page 1 of the minutes is the date and starting time of the meeting, the venue, and the composition of committees. I mean, the composition of the committee, the Joint Standing Committee, the names of members who have been...
108.
Oh, yeah. It's handwritten 8, the minutes.
The last.
It must be the last in the file. Yeah. Are we finding the document, all of us? Yeah, it shows that you are honorable members of Parliament. Somebody had said that if you want to see that councillors do not read documents, you put their paychecks in the last folder of the file, of the induction file. And all of them will run to ATMs when the money is in their files. Yeah, and then, page 2 concludes the composition and the attendance, and then a list of names of that constitute the secretariat. And then we we also have the media and guests who were part of the meeting on at the bottom of page 2. And then on page 3, that is the summary of the outcomes of the meetings, starting with the opening, clarity on membership, and the nomination, and election process, that is point 3, 3.1 to 3.3. And then item number 4 was the process of elections as it was conducted, starting with the nomination and election of the co-chair from the NCOP and then the National Assembly, and then the declaration of results and the closing remarks. The meeting ended at 9:15. Honorable members, can I move for the adoption of those minutes as a true reflection of what
Chair.
transpired? Honorable Dagmo?
Yeah, Chair, just the only thing I noticed is that on paragraph 3.3 on page 4, there's just a small mistake towards the end there. It says, end of 3.3, it says concerns related to the process followed could be brought. It should just, I think it should be brought.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I picked up, but otherwise I support any mover to adopt the minutes or even propose.
Okay. Honorable Hunsinger,
Chairperson, I second for the adoption of the minutes.
with that correction. Honorable Khadebe? Okay. Is there any objection to Honorable Nilmay?
Chair, sorry, I actually nominated you in that meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
Was it you or was it Dagmo?
It was me.
I think the member is correct. So I don't mind if the minutes reflect something else. I really don't
I was
mind.
the first one to speak to
I really
nominate
don't
you.
Oh, you were the first to nominate?
Yes.
Okay, no, it's fine. It will be corrected. Yeah. It will go into the record as such. I think Honorable Dagmo agrees that it is you he seconded. So let's put it in the record as such. Going on, honorable members, the minutes are duly adopted with those corrections. Can I hand over to you to do the closing remarks?
Thanks, Co-Chair. I think, honorable members, that brings us to the end of our meeting. Then we hope that you'll get a communique on when will be our next meeting, and let's make sure that whatever communique that will be coming from Cindy, all of us will respond to that. And I think we have agreed on scheduling other meetings for next year. So but there could be some communications from our side that could be urgent. Then we'll communicate with you. We have a group chat. Then if it's urgent, then we'll take it from there. Thanks very much. The meeting agent.
Next week's meetings, is there also?
Yes, all the meetings we're gonna meet next year, unless if there will be urgent issues, then we'll communicate in the group chat and through the emails. Yes. It's a continuation. It's a continuation. Every day you'll be learning. Every meeting you'll be learning. The induction obviously is a matter of process for a first meeting, for a first sitting. In the next meeting, you'll also have another induction. We are going to have another strategic workshop, all those things, including the tour to Germany or to China, Paris. You see, yeah, they've already proposed in China. They are saying Paris. What is important is for us to be empowered on making sure that we understand what is it that we need to do as a committee. Thanks very much.